3 weeks after the liberation of New Haven, Jake Morrison stood in the colony's rebuilt communication center and watched reports flooding in from across the galaxy. The victory over the Zephyrian fleet had triggered something the Empire had never faced before: coordinated rebellion on multiple worlds. The Andorians of Kepler-7 had risen up against their overseers, using modified mining equipment similar to what Dr. Lisa Park had developed. The Trell workers on Gamma-9 had seized control of their station and were broadcasting calls for other enslaved species to join their revolution. Even on worlds that remained under Zephyrian control, there were reports of sabotage and underground resistance movements. "The Empire is calling you a terrorist and a war criminal," Mike Chen reported, reading from an intercepted alien transmission. "They've put a bounty of 10 million credits on your head." Jake laughed and shook his head. 3 weeks ago, they thought humans were harmless animals. Now I'm the most wanted criminal in their empire. I'd say that's progress. Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her research station where she was analyzing data on other alien species within the Empire. "Captain, I've identified 17 different races that should be vulnerable to our electromagnetic weapons. If we can get this information to the right resistance groups, it could change the balance of power across dozens of star systems." Amy Bell entered the communications center carrying a tablet filled with messages from other human colonies. At 16, she had become the unofficial coordinator of human resistance activities, using her knowledge of hidden communication networks to maintain contact with settlements throughout human space. "We've got responses from 12 other colonies," Amy reported. "They want to know if we can share our weapon modifications and tactical information. Some of them are already being threatened by alien scout ships." Jake nodded grimly. The victory at New Haven had made humanity a target for the entire Zephyrian Empire. Intelligence reports suggested that massive fleets were being assembled to crush human resistance before it could spread further. "What's our defensive situation?" Jake asked Mike. "We've got about 400 armed colonists now, plus the weapons and equipment we captured from the Zephyrians," Mike replied. "But if they send a real fleet against us, we won't be able to stop them." Jake looked around the communications center at the people who had become his extended family during the war. Amy Bell had grown from a frightened teenager into a skilled intelligence coordinator. Dr. Lisa Park had transformed from a civilian scientist into the architect of humanity's most effective weapon. Mike Chen had evolved from a simple soldier into a strategic thinker who could outmaneuver alien commanders. "We can't win by just defending ourselves," Jake said finally. "We need to take the fight to them." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. Jake pointed to the star map displayed on the main screen, which showed Zephyrian territories and the locations of recent rebellions. "Look at the pattern. Every successful uprising has happened on worlds with mining operations or industrial facilities, places where our electromagnetic weapons can be most effective." Dr. Lisa understood immediately. "You want to spread the technology to more worlds?" "Not just the technology," Jake corrected. "We need to teach other species how to fight back, how to coordinate their resistance, how to turn their oppressors' own weapons against them." Mike frowned at the tactical implications. "That would mean leaving New Haven vulnerable while we help other worlds. Are we ready for that risk?" Before Jake could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the communication center. Amy quickly checked her monitoring equipment, and her face went pale. "Incoming ships," she announced. "Lots of them. They're human vessels, but I'm reading at least 20 different ship signatures." Jake felt his heart race. 20 human ships meant that word of their victory had reached Earth itself. The question was whether those ships brought reinforcements or refugees? The answer came when the communication system crackled to life with a familiar voice. New Haven Colony, this is Admiral Kate Foster of the Earth Defense Force. Request permission to enter your system. Jake grabbed the communication microphone with shaking hands. Earth had sent a fleet, which meant humanity was finally taking the alien threat seriously. Admiral Foster, this is Captain Jake Morrison. Permission granted. Welcome to New Haven. 20 minutes later, Admiral Foster materialized in the communication center via holographic projector. She was a tall woman with silver hair and intense blue eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her, Jake could see the bridge of a massive warship that dwarfed anything in the New Haven Defense Fleet. Captain Morrison, Admiral Foster said formally, on behalf of the Earth government and the Colonial Defense Authority, I want to thank you for your service to humanity. Your actions here have changed everything. Thank you, Admiral, Jake replied, but I'm not sure we've accomplished as much as people think. We won one battle against one fleet. Admiral Foster smiled grimly. You did much more than that, Captain. You proved that the aliens can be beaten. You gave hope to enslaved species across the galaxy. And you showed the Zephyrian Empire that humanity will not go quietly into slavery. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the holographic display expanded to show a tactical map of the local galaxy. We've been in contact with 17 different resistance movements since your victory. The Andorians want to establish a formal alliance. The Trell have asked for military advisors. 3 other species have requested copies of Dr. Park's electromagnetic weapon designs. Dr. Lisa stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, sharing that technology widely could be dangerous. In the wrong hands, it could be used against civilian populations. That's a risk we'll have to manage carefully, Admiral Foster agreed. But the alternative is allowing the Empire to crush each resistance movement separately. We need coordinated action across multiple star systems. Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders again. But this time, it was different. Instead of just protecting one small colony, he was being asked to help coordinate a galactic rebellion. What exactly are you asking us to do? Jake said. Admiral Foster's expression became even more serious. I'm asking you to come with us, Captain. You, your senior staff, and anyone else who wants to join the fight. We're establishing a new organization called the Liberation Front. And we need people who understand how to fight the Empire. Amy Bell looked up from her communication station. What about New Haven? What about the people here? The colony will be protected, Admiral Foster assured her. We're leaving a full defense squadron and enough equipment to maintain your electromagnetic defenses. But the real safety for New Haven lies in defeating the Empire, not just hiding from it. Jake looked around at his team one more time. Mike Chen nodded slightly, indicating he was ready to follow wherever Jake led. Dr. Lisa was already thinking about the research possibilities that would come with access to Earth's resources. Amy seemed torn between her desire to continue the fight and her need to protect her little brother Danny. I'll go, Jake said finally. But my people get to choose for themselves. No one gets forced into this war. Agreed, Admiral Foster said. We'll give everyone 48 hours to decide. Over the next 2 days, Jake was amazed by how many colonists volunteered to join the Liberation Front. Nearly 100 people, including many who had never been soldiers before the invasion, stepped forward to continue the fight against the Empire. Amy Bell was among the volunteers, but only after arranging for Danny to stay on New Haven with a foster family. He's been through enough, she told Jake, but I need to finish what we started here. Dr. Lisa Park eagerly accepted the chance to work with Earth's best scientists on improving the electromagnetic weapons. We're just scratching the surface of what's possible, she explained. With proper resources, we could develop technology that affects entire fleets at once. Mike Chen simply said, "Where you go, I go, Captain. We've got a war to win." On the day of departure, Jake stood in the same arena where he had killed Vexithar and looked around at the colony that had become his home. New Haven bore the scars of war, but it also showed signs of hope. Children played in the streets again, families were reunited, and people were building new lives from the ashes of the old ones. Young Danny Bell ran up to Jake and hugged him tightly. "Are you really going to beat all the bad aliens?" the boy asked. Jake knelt down and looked into Danny's earnest eyes. "We're going to try, kid. And when we're done, you and Amy and everyone else will be safe to live however you want to live." "Promise?" Danny asked. Jake thought about all the battles still to come, all the worlds still enslaved, all the species still suffering under alien oppression. It would be a long war with no guarantee of victory. But looking at this brave boy who had survived so much, Jake felt the same determination that had carried him through the arena fight against Vexthar. "I promise," Jake said. As the Earth ships prepared to depart, Jake took one last look at the memorial that had been erected for the colonists who died in the invasion. Their names were carved in stone along with a simple inscription. They died free. The Liberation Front fleet jumped to hyperspace carrying hope too. The news of Vexithar's death spread across the galaxy faster than the Zephyrian Empire could control it. Alien communications networks carried the story from world to world, often with exaggerated details that made Jake Morrison sound like a mythical warrior who could kill with his bare hands. On the slave world of Kepler-7, a species called the Andorians heard the story from their Zephyrian overseers. The bird-like creatures had served the Empire for 30 years, believing resistance was impossible. But when they learned that humans had killed a war-cast commander, some began to whisper about rebellion. The insect-like Trell workers on mining. Station Gamma 9 stopped their labor when they heard the news. Their compound eyes turned toward the sky as they wondered if other species might follow the human example. For the first time in generations, the Trell began to hope. Even on the Zephyrian homeworld, citizens discussed the impossible news in hushed voices. A primitive mammalian species had defeated their greatest warrior in single combat. Some called it impossible propaganda, but others wondered what it meant for the Empire's future. Back on New Haven, Jake Morrison stood in the colony's command center and tried to understand the larger situation. His wounds were bandaged and his arm was in a sling, but he refused to rest while the battle continued. Mike Chen stood beside him, pointing to tactical displays that showed alien and human positions throughout the settlement. "We control about 60% of the colony now," Mike reported. "The aliens have retreated to defensive positions around their landing zones, but they're not leaving. I think they're waiting for orders from their fleet." Jake looked up through the command center's windows at the alien ships still hanging in space above them. "They don't know what to do," he said. "Losing a warcast commander isn't something they've planned for." Dr. Lisa Park entered the command center carrying a tablet computer filled with her research data. "Captain, I've been analyzing the electromagnetic frequencies we used against Vexthar. I think I can modify our mining equipment to affect other alien species, too." "How long would that take?" Jake asked. "If we can get to the main processing plant, maybe 6 hours," Lisa replied. "But the aliens still control that area." Amy Bell appeared in the doorway, her clothes torn and dirty from fighting throughout the colony. "Captain, I can get a team, Into the processing plant. The aliens don't know about the maintenance tunnels that run underneath it. Jake shook his head. It's too dangerous. You're just a kid. Amy's eyes flashed with anger. I'm 16 years old and I've been fighting these aliens since they arrived. Don't treat me like a child. She's right, Mike added quietly. Amy knows the colony better than anyone. If anyone can get into that plant, it's her. Jake sighed and looked at the young woman who had already done so much for the resistance. Take 5 volunteers, no more. Get in, help Dr. Park with her modifications, and get out. Don't try to be heroes. Amy nodded and left to gather her team. Jake watched her go and wondered when children had been forced to become soldiers. The Jill. War had changed everyone on New Haven, making them harder and more desperate than they had ever been before. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian fleet above the colony, chaos ruled the command ships. Vice Commander Kethavar paced back and forth in the flagship's control room, his scales shifting between different shades of red as his emotions swung from rage to fear to confusion. How do we report this to the High Command? Asked Sub-Commander Yexkar, a younger officer who had never seen combat before the New Haven invasion. We don't, Kethavar snapped. No one can know that a human killed Vexthar in ritual combat. It would destroy morale throughout the Empire. But, sir, hundreds of our soldiers witnessed the fight, Yexkar protested. The story is already spreading. Through the fleet communications. Kethavar stopped pacing and turned to face his subordinate. Then we kill every human on that planet and claim they died resisting capture. No survivors, no witnesses, no evidence that Vexathar was defeated. What about our own soldiers who saw the combat? Yexkar asked. They will remain silent if they value their lives. Kethavar replied coldly. But silencing witnesses would prove more difficult than the vice commander expected. Word of the human victory had already reached alien soldiers on other ships, and many were beginning to question their commander's claims of Zephyrian superiority. On New Haven's surface, Amy Bell led her team through narrow maintenance tunnels toward the processing plant. The 5 volunteers who followed her were all teenagers who had lost family members in the invasion. They moved silently through the darkness, guided only by Amy's perfect knowledge of the colony's hidden passages. Remember, Amy whispered as they approached their target. We're not here to fight. We get Dr. Park inside, protect her while she works, and then we all leave together. The team emerged from a hidden entrance inside the processing plant's main building. Alien guards patrolled the area, but they were focused on watching for attacks from outside. They never thought to look for enemies emerging from beneath their feet. Dr. Lisa Park slipped through the shadows toward the main processing equipment, while Amy's team kept watch. The scientist worked quickly, connecting her modified devices to the massive machinery that normally separated valuable minerals from raw ore. How much longer? Amy asked quietly. 3 more hours, Lisa replied without looking up from her work. The frequency calculations are more complex than I expected. Outside the plant, the sound of gunfire echoed across the colony as human and alien forces continued their deadly game of cat and mouse. Jake's Marines had become experts at hit-and-run tactics, striking at alien patrols and then melting away into the civilian areas where orbital bombardment would cause too much damage to valuable infrastructure. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy they didn't understand. Humans seemed to pop up everywhere at once, attacking from directions that should have been impossible to reach. Worse, their weapons now penetrated alien armor with ease, turning every encounter into a deadly gamble. In the fleet above, Kethvar grew more frustrated by the hour. His ground forces were taking heavy casualties and losing territory to what should have been helpless prey animals. The longer the fighting continued, the more likely it became that news of Vexthar's defeat would spread beyond New Haven. "Sir," Yexkar reported nervously, "we're receiving communications from other Zephyrian fleets asking for confirmation about Vexthar's status. The rumors are spreading faster than we can control them." Kethvar's scales turned almost black with rage. "Prepare for orbital bombardment of the entire colony. If we cannot silence the humans, we will kill them all. But, sir, that will destroy the mining equipment and infrastructure. The High Command expects us to capture this world intact. The High Command expects us to maintain Zephyrian superiority," Kethvar snarled. "If that means destroying this world, so be it." The alien fleet began powering up their orbital bombardment weapons, massive energy cannons that could turn the surface of New Haven into molten glass. But before they could fire, Dr. Lisa Park completed her modifications to the processing plant. "It's done," she announced to Amy's team. "Everyone get clear of the machinery." Lisa activated her modified equipment and the plant's massive processing. Arrays began generating electromagnetic pulses across multiple frequencies. The invisible energy waves spread outward from New Haven like ripples in a pond, reaching into space toward the alien fleet. On the Zephyrian ships, alarms began sounding as the electromagnetic pulse interfered with their systems. But the real effect was on the alien crews themselves. Soldiers throughout the fleet suddenly found their scales becoming brittle and their movements becoming sluggish. "What's happening to us?" Yexkar gasped as his own scales began cracking. Kethvar tried to give orders for immediate bombardment, but his voice came out as a weak hiss. The electromagnetic frequencies that Dr. Lisa had calculated were affecting every Zephyrian in the fleet, making them weak and vulnerable, just as Vexthar had become in the arena. Back on the surface, Jake Morrison watched through binoculars as the alien fleet began to drift aimlessly in space. Ships that should have been precisely coordinated started bumping into each other as their crews struggled with the effects of the electromagnetic attack. "It's working," Mike Chen said in amazement. "Lisa actually did it." Jake lowered his binoculars and smiled for the first time since the invasion began. "Signal all our forces. It's time to finish this fight." Throughout New Haven, human resistance. Fighters emerged from their hiding places and advanced on the remaining alien positions. The Zephyrian soldiers, weakened by the electromagnetic pulse, could barely fight back as colonists armed with mining equipment overwhelmed their defensive positions. Amy Bell led her team in an attack on the alien command post, where demoralized enemies surrendered rather than face weapons that could now slice through their armor like paper. The teenagers who had started the war as helpless victims were ending it as victorious soldiers. Within 2 hours, organized Zephyrian resistance on New Haven had collapsed completely. Some aliens fled to their ships, others surrendered, and a few fought to the death rather than face the humiliation of defeat. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. Vexthar staggered backward as green blood flowed from the deep cut in his leg. His scales, once gleaming gold armor, now looked like cracked stone that could break at any touch. The alien commander's yellow eyes were wide with shock and something Jake had never seen there before: fear. The crowd of human prisoners erupted in surprised shouts. They had watched their captain being torn apart for 20 minutes, expecting to witness his death. Now, suddenly, the mighty alien warrior was bleeding and stumbling like any mortal creature. "Impossible," Vexthar hissed, looking down at his damaged scales. "What have you done to me?" Jake wiped blood from his eyes and advanced on the alien commander. His body ached from dozens of cuts, and his left arm hung useless at his side, but he could see victory within reach. "I told you that you'd find out what humans are capable of." Vexithar tried to retreat, but his wounded leg made him slow and clumsy. He swiped at Jake with his claws, but they shattered against his own brittle scales when Jake blocked the attack. The alien stared at his broken talons in disbelief. "Your natural weapons won't save you now," Jake said grimly. He lunged forward, with his combat knife aiming for the alien's throat. Vexithar barely managed to grab Jake's wrist, stopping the blade inches from his neck. The two fighters struggled against each other, but the alien's strength was fading with his blood loss. Jake could see panic in those yellow eyes as Vexithar realized he was losing. Around the arena, other Zephyrian soldiers watched in growing alarm. Their war-cast commander, who had never lost a single combat in 50 years of conquest, was being defeated by a small human. Some of the younger aliens looked ready to intervene, but their own laws prevented them from interfering in ritual combat. In the crowd of prisoners, Amy Bell held her breath as she watched Jake fighting for all their lives. Her little brother Danny pressed close to her side, too frightened to look away. Dr. Lisa Park observed every detail of the fight, taking mental notes about alien physiology that might help them later. "Jake's winning," Amy whispered in amazement. The battle became more desperate as both fighters grew weaker. Vexithar tried to use his size advantage to pin Jake to the ground, but his brittle scales cracked further with every movement. Jake rolled away and struck again with his knife, opening another deep wound in the alien's side. "This cannot be happening," Vexithar gasped. "Humans are weak. Humans are prey." "We're survivors," Jake replied, circling around behind the alien, "and we don't give up." Vexithar spun around to face Jake, but his damaged leg gave out beneath him. The alien commander fell to one knee, green blood pooling around him in the arena sand. He looked up at Jake with hatred burning in his eyes. "Kill me then if you can," Vexithar snarled. "But know that 100 more fleets will come for your people. The Empire will never stop." Jake raised his knife, but then paused. He looked around, the arena at all the watching aliens and humans. An idea formed in his mind, something that might be even more effective than simply killing his opponent. "You're right," Jake said loudly, making sure everyone could hear him. "The Empire will send more fleets, but they'll send them knowing that humans can kill their war-cast commanders in single combat." Vexthar's scales turned pale with understanding. In Zephyrian culture, being defeated in ritual combat was worse than dying. It meant the loser was unworthy of command, unworthy of respect, unworthy of life itself. "You cannot leave me alive," Vexthar pleaded. "It would be the greatest dishonor." "No," Jake replied. Then he struck with his knife one final time. The blade found its mark between Vexithar's neck and shoulder, severing the main artery there. Green blood sprayed across the arena sand as the alien commander collapsed forward. His yellow eyes went dim as life fled from his massive body. Jake stood over his fallen enemy, breathing heavily and covered in both human and alien blood. The arena fell completely silent, except for the sound of wind blowing across the colony. Even the alien soldiers seemed stunned by what they had witnessed. Then Jake did something that shocked everyone present. He reached down and picked up Vexthar's severed head, holding it high so that every alien in the arena could see it clearly. Blood dripped from the trophy as Jake turned to face the Zephyrian officers. "Who's next?" Jake asked in a voice that carried across the entire colony. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. The Zephyrian warriors, who had conquered, Dozens of worlds without ever losing a warcast commander suddenly looked uncertain and afraid. Their entire worldview was built on the belief that they were the superior species, the natural rulers of the galaxy. Vice Commander Kethvar Vexthars, second in command, stepped forward with his scales turning dark red with rage. "You will pay for this insult, human," he snarled. "Will I?" Jake asked, still holding the severed head. "Your commander thought the same thing 5 minutes ago." Kethvar's hand moved toward his weapon, but then stopped. The other alien officers were watching him carefully, and he knew that challenging Jake to combat might result in another humiliating defeat. If two warcast commanders fell to the same human, it would shatter Zephyrian confidence throughout the Empire. At that moment, explosions echoed across the colony. Mike Chen had chosen this perfect opportunity to launch his coordinated attack on the alien positions. Mining charges detonated throughout New Haven as the human resistance emerged from their tunnels, armed with modified mining equipment that could penetrate alien armor. The Zephyrian soldiers, already demoralized by their commander's death, found themselves under assault from enemies they thought were completely defeated. Human colonists, who had seemed broken and helpless, suddenly fought back with the fury of people who had nothing left to lose. Amy Bell led a group of teenagers in a daring raid on the alien communication center. They had memorized the layout during their time as prisoners and now used that knowledge to sabotage the equipment that coordinated the occupation forces. Dr. Lisa Park organized the older colonists to convert every mining tool in the settlement into an anti-alien weapon. The electromagnetic pulse devices that had given Jake his victory in the arena now provided the resistance with weapons that could punch through Zephyrian armor. The tide of battle turned quickly. Alien forces that had seemed invincible just hours before now retreated toward their landing ships, carrying their wounded and trying to regroup. Some Zephyrian units held their positions, but others simply fled when they realized their enemies had found a way to neutralize their natural advantages. Jake dropped Vexthar's head and picked up the alien commander's personal weapon, a curved blade that hummed with energy. He looked around the arena at the chaos erupting throughout the colony and smiled grimly. "The fight's not over yet," he called to the human prisoners. "But now we have a chance." The detention center gates burst open as Mike Chen's Marines overwhelmed the guards. Thousands of human colonists poured out of their prison barracks, some grabbing alien weapons from fallen soldiers, others improvising weapons from whatever they could find. Young Danny Bell ran to Jake and hugged his legs, tears streaming down his face. "I knew you'd win," the boy said. "I knew you'd save us." Jake knelt down despite his wounds and put his hands on Danny's shoulders. "We're not saved yet, kid. This is just the beginning." Amy appeared at Jake's side, her face dirty from the fighting, but her eyes bright with hope. "Captain, Sergeant, Chen wants to know if you can walk. We need to get you to the medical center." "I can walk," Jake said, getting to his feet with some difficulty. "What's our status?" "We've taken back about half the colony," Amy reported. "The aliens are regrouping near their ships, but they're not retreating yet. I think they're waiting for reinforcements." Jake nodded and looked up at the alien fleet still orbiting above New Haven. The ships hadn't moved since the fighting began, which suggested their commanders were confused and uncertain about how to respond to the situation. They don't know what to do, Jake realized. They've never faced a successful rebellion before. Dr. Lisa approached the group carrying a medical kit. "Captain, you need treatment for those wounds, and I need to tell you something important about what I observed during your fight." As Lisa began cleaning Jake's injuries, she spoke quietly so only he could hear. The electromagnetic effect worked even better than I hoped. But I also noticed something else. When Vexthar's scales became brittle, it affected his nervous system too. He became slower and less coordinated. That could be useful information, Jake said. It gets better, Lisa continued. I think the same vulnerability exists in other species within the Zephyrian Empire. If we can find the right frequencies, we might be able to neutralize multiple alien races at once. Jake felt a spark of real hope for the first time since the invasion began. They had proven that humans could fight back against overwhelming odds. But now they needed to think beyond just surviving. They needed to find a way to take the fight to their enemies. Around them, the battle for New Haven continued to rage as human and alien forces clashed throughout the colony. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Iron Wolf and watched the stars through the main viewing screen. The small patrol ship moved slowly through space near the mining colony of New Haven. 12,000 people lived on the colony, working hard to dig rare minerals from the asteroids that floated around their new home. The morning had started like any other day. Jake had checked the duty rosters, reviewed the patrol schedules, and made sure his 200 Marines were ready for anything. New Haven was far from Earth, sitting on the edge of known space where anything could happen. Most days nothing did happen, but Jake always stayed alert. His communication officer, a young woman named Betty, turned from her station. "Captain, we have ships coming out of hyperspace," she said. "Looks like 12 vessels, but they're big. Really big." Jake moved to look at the sensor readings. The ships were massive, much larger than any human vessel he had ever seen. "Are they on our shipping schedule?" he asked. Betty checked her computer and shook her head. "No, sir. We weren't expecting any supply ships for another 2 weeks. 40 ships appeared on the main screen as they finished their jump from hyperspace. Jake felt his stomach drop when he saw them clearly. These were not human ships. The vessels were dark and angular, with sharp edges that made them look like weapons, even when they were just sitting in space. Strange symbols covered their hulls, glowing with a red light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Red alert," Jake ordered. "All hands to battle stations. Send a message to New Haven and tell them to prepare for possible attack." The bridge lights changed to red, and alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Jake's crew moved quickly to their positions. The Iron Wolf was small compared to the alien ships, but it was fast and well-armed for its size. Jake had fought pirates and raiders before, but never aliens. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from the lead ship," Betty reported. "Put it on screen," Jake said. The viewing screen changed to show a creature that made Jake's blood run cold. The alien stood 8 feet tall with dark green scales that covered its entire body. Its head was long and narrow like a snake, with yellow eyes that seemed to look right through Jake. Sharp teeth filled its mouth when it spoke. "Human vessel," the alien said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "I am Warcast Vexthar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your colony and all humans within this system now belong to us. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human colony New Haven. This is human space. You have no authority here." The alien's scales changed from green to a darker red color. "Human space?" Vexthar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Humans are nothing but primitive mammals. You have no rights in this galaxy. You will serve the Empire or you will die." "We choose neither," Jake said firmly. Vexithar's eyes narrowed. "Then you choose death." The transmission ended. Jake turned to his weapons officer. All guns ready. Target the lead ship. The Iron Wolf opened fire first, sending bright blue energy beams toward the alien fleet. The shots hit Vexthar's ship, but barely left marks on its dark hull. In response, 12 alien vessels fired back at once. The Iron Wolf shook violently as alien weapons tore into its shields. Jake grabbed his chair to keep from falling as explosions echoed through the ship. "Damage report!" he shouted. "Shields down to 30%, called his engineering officer. "Hull damage on decks 4 and 5. Jake knew they could not win this fight. The alien ships were too big and too powerful, but he could buy time for the colony to prepare defenses. "Keep firing. All power to weapons." The Iron Wolf continued its attack, but the alien ships barely seemed to notice. One by one, the ship's systems began failing under the constant bombardment. The lights flickered, and smoke filled the bridge. "Captain, we have alien ships heading for the colony," Betty reported. "Dozens of smaller vessels launching from the main fleet." Jake watched the screen as alien dropships raced toward New Haven. Each ship carried soldiers to invade his home. His people had families down there, children who had never seen war. "Set course for the colony," Jake ordered. "Full speed." "Sir, our engines are damaged." "We can barely maintain half speed," the engineering officer replied. Jake clenched his fists. The Iron Wolf limped toward New Haven while alien ships swarmed around the colony like angry insects. He could see explosions on the surface as the invasion began. The alien fleet surrounded the Iron Wolf before it could reach the colony. Tractor beams pulled the small human ship toward one of the massive vessels. Jake knew it was over, but he would not give up without a fight. "Prepare for boarding," he told his crew. "Make them pay for every step." The aliens cut through the Iron Wolf's hull with ease. Tall figures in dark armor poured into the ship, carrying weapons that fired red energy bolts. Jake's Marines fought, back with everything they had, but the aliens were too strong and too many. Jake himself led the defense of the bridge until the very end. He killed 3 alien soldiers before a stun weapon knocked him unconscious. The last thing he saw was Vexthaar, stepping over the bodies of his crew. When Jake woke up, he was in chains aboard an alien ship. Through a small window, he could see New Haven below. The colony was burning in dozens of places. Alien ships landed near every settlement, and humans were being herded into groups like cattle. Vexthaar appeared in front of Jake's cell. The alien commander looked pleased with himself. "Your resistance lasted exactly 17 minutes, he said. "Your people are now property of the Zephyrian Empire." "What do you want with us?" Jake asked. "Labor," Vexthaar replied simply. "Humans will work in our mines and factories. Your children will be raised as proper servants. Some of you may even earn the privilege of serving Zephyrian nobles personally." Jake felt rage building inside him. "And if we refuse?" Vexthar's scales shifted to that dark red color again. "Then you will serve as examples to other species who might think of resisting us. We have conquered 47 worlds, human. Your people are not special." "You're wrong," Jake said quietly. "Am I?" Vexthaar leaned closer to the cell. "Your mighty warship lasted less than 20 minutes. Your colony fell in less than an hour. What makes humans think they are anything but weak prey?" Jake looked directly into the alien's yellow eyes. "You'll find out." Vexthaar straightened up and walked away, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. "Bring this one to the detention center with the others," he told his guards. "Let him watch as his people learn their place." The guards dragged Jake from his cell and through the corridors of the alien ship. He saw other human prisoners being moved in the same direction. Some were crying, others looked angry, but all of them looked to Jake when they saw him. Even in chains, he was still their captain. As they reached the transport bay, Jake made a silent promise to his people and to himself. The aliens thought humans were weak because they had won one battle. But Jake knew something Vexthar did not understand. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and they had learned that losing the first battle did not mean losing the war. The transport ship carrying Jake and the other prisoners descended toward New Haven. Through the windows, Jake could see his home colony under alien control, but he also saw something else that gave him hope. Not all the human settlements were burning. Some areas showed no signs of battle at all. That meant some of his people had escaped the initial attack. Somewhere down there, humans were free and planning their next move. Jake smiled grimly as the transport landed. The aliens thought they had won, but the real fight was just beginning. The detention center was a collection of metal buildings surrounded by electric fences and guard towers. Thousands of humans sat in crowded barracks, watched over by Zephyrian soldiers who treated them like dangerous animals. Jake was thrown into a cell with 50 other colonists, including people he had known for years. Among the prisoners was Dr. Lisa Park, a scientist who had been studying the local plants and animals before the invasion. She was a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. When she saw Jake, she moved closer to him. "Captain Morrison," she whispered, "I need to tell you something important." Jake looked around to make sure no guards were listening. "What is it, Doc?" "During the attack, I was running scans on the alien soldiers," Lisa said quietly. "Their scales are not just armor. They regulate body temperature like a reptile's skin. But I noticed something strange when they were near our mining equipment." "What kind of strange?" Jake asked. "The electromagnetic fields from our machinery made their scales change color and texture. I think the specific frequency we use for ore processing might weaken their natural armor." Jake felt a spark of hope. "Are you certain?" "I need more data." "To be sure, but it could be their weakness," Lisa replied. "If we could modify some of our mining tools—" Their conversation was interrupted by shouting outside. Guards were dragging a group of teenagers toward the punishment area. Jake recognized one of them immediately. Amy Bell was only 16 years old, but she had the fierce determination of someone much older. Her parents had died in the invasion, leaving her to care for her 12-year-old brother Danny. "Where are they taking her?" Jake asked another prisoner. "The aliens caught her trying to sabotage one of their vehicles," the man replied. "They're making an example of anyone who resists." Jake watched through the fence as Amy was forced to her knees in front of all the prisoners. Vexithar himself appeared to oversee the punishment. The alien commander's scales were bright red with anger. This human child thought she could damage Zephyrian property, Vexthar announced loudly. "She will learn that resistance is futile." But instead of hurting Amy directly, Vexithar grabbed her little brother Danny from the crowd of prisoners. The boy cried out as alien claws lifted him off the ground. "The child dies for her crimes," Vexithar declared. "No!" Amy screamed. "Punish me, not him." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. The alien was going to kill a 12-year-old boy to prove a point. Around the detention center, other prisoners began shouting in anger and horror. Vexthar raised one clawed hand toward Danny's throat. "Let this be a lesson to all humans. Resistance brings only death." "Wait!" Jake called out loudly. Vexthar paused and looked toward Jake's cell. "The defeated captain speaks. How amusing." "Your people have rules about single combat, don't they?" Jake said. I challenge you for the boy's life." The alien commander's scales shifted to a darker shade of red. "You dare challenge a warcast of the Zephyrian Empire?" "I do," Jake replied firmly. Vexthar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the detention center. "Very well, human. Tomorrow you will die in the arena, and this child will die afterward. Your defiance only delays the inevitable." That night, Jake lay awake in his cell thinking about the fight to come. Vexthar was 8 feet tall with natural armor and claws that could cut through metal. Jake was strong for a human, but he seemed hopelessly outmatched. Dr. Lisa crawled over to where Jake was lying. "I heard what you did," she whispered. "You're going to need an edge." She pressed a small device into his hand. It looked like a standard mining tool, but Jake could feel that it had been modified. "It emits the electromagnetic frequency I told you about," Lisa explained. "Get close enough to use it, and his scales should become brittle. But you'll only get one chance." Meanwhile, in the abandoned mining tunnels beneath New Haven, Staff Sergeant Mike Chen was planning his next move. He had escaped the initial invasion with 30 Marines and was slowly building a resistance network. The natural ore deposits in the tunnels blocked alien scanners, making them perfect hideouts. Mike was a tough soldier who had served with Jake for 3 years. He was shorter than his captain, but twice as stubborn. When he heard about Jake's capture, he began planning a rescue mission. "We hit their supply depot tomorrow night," Mike told his men. "We need those electromagnetic pulse grenades they're storing there." One of his Marines, Corporal Pete, looked worried. "Sergeant, that depot has 50 guards. We're only 30 people. Then we'll have to be smarter than them," Mike replied. "Amy Bell got us the layout before she was captured. We know exactly where to strike." Amy had become a crucial link between the resistance and the detention centers. Before her capture, she had moved through the colony like a ghost, carrying messages and gathering intelligence. Her knowledge of the alien positions was helping Mike plan attacks that the Zephyrians never expected. In the detention center, Amy sat in her cell next to her brother Danny. She blamed herself for his situation, but Danny just held her hand. "Jake's going to save us," the boy said with the simple faith of a child. "I hope so," Amy whispered back. The next morning, the entire colony was forced to watch as the arena was prepared. The Zephyrians had built it in the center of New Haven's main square, where everyone could see. Alien soldiers from other parts of the Empire arrived to witness the combat. Some came from nearby star systems just to watch a human die. Jake was brought to the arena in chains. The crowd of human prisoners watched in tense silence as their captain was led to what seemed like certain death. Children cried, and adults prayed, but no one looked away. Vexthar entered the arena wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed in the sunlight. His scales had turned gold, which Jake had learned meant the alien was feeling confident and proud. The commander carried no weapons, except his natural claws, following the traditional rules of Zephyrian combat. "Before you die, human," Vexthar announced, "know that your people will serve the Empire for 1,000 generations. Your sacrifice means nothing." Jake said nothing in reply. He gripped the small device Dr. Lisa had given him and waited for his chance. The fight began with Vexthar moving slowly around Jake, like a cat playing with a mouse. The alien's reach was much longer, and his first swipe left deep cuts across Jake's chest. Blood flowed freely, but Jake stayed on his feet. "Fight back, little mammal," Vexthar taunted. "Show me this famous human spirit." Jake ducked under another. swipe, and tried to get closer, but Vexithar's superior size kept him at a distance. The alien commander was toying with him, inflicting painful wounds but avoiding anything fatal. He wanted the humans to watch their leader suffer. In the crowd, Amy Bell watched with tears in her eyes. Her brother Danny held her hand tightly as they witnessed their captain being slowly torn apart. Dr. Lisa stood with the other prisoners, silently urging Jake to use the device she had given him. She knew he was waiting for the right moment, but she worried he might not survive long enough to find it. Miles away in the tunnels, Mike Chen listened to the fight on a stolen alien communication device. He clenched his teeth as he heard the crowd gasp with each blow Jake received. His rescue mission was planned for that night, but it might be too late. Jake rolled away from another attack and felt the device in his pocket. Vexthar was getting bolder, moving closer for more devastating strikes. Blood covered Jake's face and arms, making it hard to see clearly. "Your resistance ends now," Vexthar declared, raising both clawed hands for a killing blow. This was the moment Jake had been waiting for. As the alien commander lunged forward, Jake activated the device and rolled directly into Vexthar's path. The electromagnetic pulse hit the alien at point-blank range. Vexthar's golden scales suddenly turned gray and began cracking like old paint. The alien looked down at his body in shock and confusion. For the first time in the fight, he seemed truly surprised. Jake pulled out his combat knife and struck at Vexthar's leg. The blade, which had barely scratched the alien's scales before, now cut deep into alien flesh. Green blood poured from the wound as Vexthar roared in pain and fury. The tide of battle had turned, but Jake knew this was only the beginning.